As a child, I was terrified that Nazism would rise again. I was proud to live in the United States and wondered what kind of people could the Germans have been to create such hell. I knew we would never forget, or could we? It seems that hate is part of every nation. But when Donald Trump was named president, someone said to me, "Trump's your president now. What are you going to do about it?" So I went to marches. I put out signs in front of the studio to tell people I knew that they were hurting. Most of all, though, I had faith, and I had 7 Fine Arts. It was a gallery, a studio, and event space built in part by the people of Hoboken. My windows were now used for voting and for showing people politically where we stood. The inside of the studio was beautiful, and we started having art therapy classes to help people. Then I started having MoveOn.org and Indivisibility.org and opened the studio to the public for discussions on how we can prevent or stop actions we knew were going to be coming. But Trump kept getting worse and worse. We had children and families being separated, kids without parents behind cages in the United States, and the First Lady really didn't care while the president made love to our flag. I knew someone of good politics, Ravi, and when this happened in Hoboken, my beautiful city, but then Ravi won. And I was there, and I saw the inauguration where Cory Booker spoke, and I had the chance to meet Cory because of Don Zimmer. And so being a part of people with Hoboken, I wanted to do more. So I took 7 Fine Arts on the road, and I closed the studio. I moved in the middle of Red, Florida, to become part of the Florida Dems and to try to help. I started doing all kinds of stuff, political meetings, and working with the North County Dems, voter registrations. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to help. I was sworn in, and then I started doing art shows. I needed to make a living, and I did more art shows. And believe it or not, it did pretty well. My art was working. It was selling. So that made me very happy. I was able to do both things. I had some people with clients in big places. The Cultural Council asked me if I wanted to do a solo show. Their space was gorgeous. This would have been the biggest show of my career. Of course I wanted to do it. That's gallery space. But then COVID hit. I lost 4 commissions in one day. The shows were empty. People were dying. It was horrible. I wanted to do something about COVID. They said, okay. When George Floyd happened, I wanted to do something for the art about George Floyd, and they said nope, can't do it. And so I canceled that show and dropped out. The fires were terrible. The protests, the riots, the damage, the destruction, the hate, the anger, the fear. On a daily basis at night, there were all kinds of protests, tear gas, police. Our streets looked like there was a war zone. It was scary as hell. It was terrifying. Police were on a rampage. And then innocent political citizens and even children were asking, what are they next? We saw the rise of the KKK and Confederacy. Martin Gugino, head pushed down into blood. But we also saw the Mennonites protesting while the president played golf. And the Ku Klux Klan rose. And more people protested peacefully. We had Orthodox Jews come out in support. But which knee bothered you most, and what would you paint to document this atrocity? So I went back to my roots, and I thought long and hard. I thought about Guernica, and I thought about how painters of the past, like Rembrandt, used all kinds of imagery to tell the story. I got out my paint box. I've been painting for a long time. This is what my work looks like. So I knew that I could do it. I've been painting for years. This was done at 14, as a matter of fact. So it wasn't that I knew I couldn't do it technically. My technique is hard, though. It's many layers. This is just giving you a brief overview. Many, many layers. Here's actually one of my one of my students' work is going to come up in a second, but you see this is only 4 shots. Here's really what it looks like. There are so many layers, and this isn't my work, this is a student work. So many layers of glaze, so many layers to get that photorealism. Started my layout in Photoshop. I kept going with it, adding more and more detail. I did my color layout, and everything, so much was happening. I bought a huge canvas, and I started to print out my references and put them together with my perspective lines, really trying to tell the story of what was happening in our life and in our world. It was very hard to paint. These are things that I don't like painting. It's very emotional, it's very difficult. But being able to tell this story in a way that you can see it all at once, I felt was important. So I kept working and working and working. It took a year for me to get to where that point is, and 6 months just to do the composition. The painting is shuttered now. It's closed because my funds have run out, and while I'd like to complete this painting, I cannot do it without support and with sponsorship. I believe very much in the power of art, and I thank you for your help.